Hi, friends. Welcome back to the Let's Face It podcast. I am Samna, and in this episode, I am speaking to Kat Sayaka Nishi, who is a small business owner of Love Cat Designs and an eco and socially conscious designer. She is also a yoga instructor and a big food lover. You will see much of the theme around this conversation again goes back to the intention of this podcast, which is calling on courage into our conversations and our reflection. I hope you enjoy this episode with our incredibly independent and courageous Kat, but also you take some pointers to reflect on things in your own life. So let's go ahead and get started diving right into it. So tell us the why and how behind your business, Love Cat Designs.
So it has been basically in the works for a while now in my mind. I've already knew what my label was going to be named. I just didn't know where it was going to go from there. I have a background basically in fashion design and merchandising at Cal State Long Beach, and I knew that's what I kind of wanted to be in, like the creative end of things, and not like numbers or anything like that. And so I've been in the fashion industry, whether it be through retail, corporate, like design and everything like that, like for over 10 years now.
Right.
And throughout the process, I have been able to basically experience small companies, big companies, like corporate and everything like that, like all levels of the fashion industry, like of like from like someone that's like doing it from like their garage versus a corporate building, and like all these rules and etc. And throughout the whole thing, I think I kind of like I was trying to find my own stance on like basically fashion, because at first like you don't really think about it when you're fresh out of college. You're just kind of like, I just want to be in the industry, and like you don't really think too much into it, like what your morals are, like and if it's going to be conflicting with like whatever companies.
Right,
But the more you work in the industry, you find things like, it's like, is this all right, or like and then within like the 10 to 12 years that I have been working in the industry, there was more and more things that I basically was just not okay with, whether it be like waste consumption to like kind of like moral stances on certain things as a company, like things that like people are like, oh, we'll just twist our words and like phrase it like this. I'm like, why not just be straight up for what it is? If you don't believe in that, then don't pretend like you do. Like it didn't settle right with me in my heart. So that was kind of like the beginning of where like I started to kind of feel astray from all these companies I was working at, and feeling like, is this even okay for me to work here if I'm not happy here? And I think that's the main thing. Like I wasn't 100% happy anymore at a certain point, like working at all these companies, no matter how high of a level I was, or basically how much money I was making. It's kind of like, if I knew I wasn't basically aligned with the company views, then what was the point of staying? And I wanted to do something, basically create something that was going to make that kind of change for as a company, like really be straight up in things, and like make a company that was going to affect what I wanted to, like socially or environmental impact, like for real, not just like just saying it kind of thing. Like I wanted it to be something real. And like I think the best way to really see and feel the effects of how much change you're making within a company is to kind of do it yourself. And so that's kind of how it happened. And at first I was thinking about fashion and like clothing, but I also knew how much waste that causes. Like fast fashion is just 100% wasteful. Like things, people buy things for dirt cheap. People are being paid very low, and like for what? For something, a piece of fabric that wasn't going to be used for more than 2 times, and then was going to be thrown away. Like that didn't make sense to me. And I feel like as a society, everybody's kind of starting to shift that view of trying to find things that are more like quality over quantity, and that's going to last you like forever. And I kind of wanted that within my brand. My brand Love Cat is technically a home decor, which is kind of crazy because it's like I would have in 100 years would never imagine this, like, because like my whole life I was all about fashion design and like home decor and goods has never been a part of my life. I've always liked creating things, but it was never really something that I thought I would actually make a business or a living out of.
Right.
But I think I just kind of started on a whim, like decided, hey, this is kind of cool, like I like it. I'm just gonna make this and I'm gonna take this profit, like I'm gonna make sure that it's made sustainably and give back to the community. If I do sell it, I'm gonna give back by doing a whole percentage. Like some places do 5, 10 and whatever is fine, but I was just like, you know what, like I'm gonna do 20, like screw that, like I'm just gonna do 20%. Like I don't mind that I'm not making as much profit. It's like, but I'm 100% gonna put it in towards like a charity or a company that I want to, that is gonna be like local, or like even if it's not local, something that's gonna affect like basically people that I know, or like things I believe in.
Absolutely.
And so that's kind of how it all started and kind of rolled into all this big thing, and now I'm here.
Yeah, that's so awesome. I think what stands out is the part where you're talking about kind of feeling in alignment, right?
Yes.
With the things, the work that you're doing, the values that are attached to the work that you're doing or whoever you are working with, and feeling authentic towards it.
Yes.
And also at the same time making sure that there is some contribution being done in the community or to the values that you believe in. Right. So 100%. Yeah. And I think in so many ways we all look for that authenticity, to feel like, you know, this speaks to me, or this feels true to me. So kind of feeling in, feeling a sense of settle, I guess. I don't know how to say it.
Like, I guess it's like a connection to everything, you know? Like you want each and every action and decision that you make have a connection to something that's gonna be meaningful. Yeah. Because what's the point of having a life that you're just doing things versus like each breath that you take, each action that you do has a meaning behind it, has purpose. Like that gives your life like a lot more to work with, I think.
Yeah. And it makes the grind, it makes the effort, or even the ups and downs, like it makes it worth it.
Yes,
right?
100%.
Yeah. So I guess then that brings us to your core values, or let's say the business core values, and the things that it's grounded on. Like, you know, if you scroll through your website, there are a few things that stood out for me, and I'm looking down on my notes just in case if you're like,
I forget.
Yeah. So, you know, some of the core values that kind of stuck out, and I think this goes back. You're also a yoga instructor, so with that, through your yoga practice, and I've been a part of it, you know, kind of joined with you in that practice. What stands out is there is this touching on the importance of balance. There is respect. There is giving back and being in connection, or let's say grounded with earth, right? With Mother Earth. So tell us, why is this important for you, first of all, and why should it be important for all of us who's listening in the audience?
So that one's like kind of a loaded question for me, I guess. I think for the people that do believe it spiritually, or even like just like kind of like your natural like vibrations that you as a person or a soul makes, like we are all connected here on the earth. Like we are all made up of like, basically we started off all in this stardust, and that like Big Bang, whether or not you believe it or not, I hope. But and then things became water, and things became plants and animals, and then humans, and so basically we're all connected. We all come from the same place. And so I feel like, I don't know, certain people I think vibrate a little bit more in sync to their surroundings than others, and I'm not a professional with that kind of stuff, but for sure I think people are more sensitive to that. Certain people are more sensitive to that and realize it. And I think I just most recently, in the last 3 or 4 years, have started to kind of align with that more, and kind of am more sensitive to it than before. And so like whenever I see things like people that are like obviously trashing the world or like ruining the environment. It literally hurts my soul. And most people probably don't feel it to the extent that like I probably do. It's kind of weird. Like it's a weird sensation that I get. And
what would you say was the shift, which you were mentioning that not until like few years that kind of changed?
I think really thinking it was realizing what was important to me. I hit my 30s literally. This is gonna reveal my age. I hit my 30s 2 years ago, and a little bit before that, like I was kind of struggling to figure out like, is this okay? Am I okay staying here at this job? Like I wasn't happy at all. And like I was trying to figure out why. Why was I not happy? And it wasn't the people around me. It wasn't the job. But I think it was basically the fact that I knew what I was doing was making the world probably not a better place, if not worse. And on top of that, the balance of life schedule versus like how I was working was probably not the most in alignment to what should have been happening in my life at that point. And at a certain point, I think I was kind of like at around 30, 29, 30. I was kind of like threw my hands up and was like, oh no, screw it, fuck it. I mean, sorry. Sorry, is it okay?
Yeah.
I was just like, fuck it. Like, you know what? Like, why? Why am I doing all this work? Why am I stressing out so much over all this stuff? Like, I need to figure out what it is I really like connect with. And so it was kind of like a more deep dive of trying to connect with myself and what really resonated with me. And for me, some people it's interaction with people, some people it's animals, some people, and for me it just ends up being like part of the earth and having a balance within everything. And not like I just, it's weird. It's kind of like you don't realize it, but every day in your life you're kind of like working on this balance beam or like this what do you call it, scale, and you're tipping it one way or another. And if you don't stop to really think about it, you're in your daily life, you're constantly tipping it back and forth, and it's kind of exhausting to think about it. And then if you take a moment to kind of really set yourself back and really look at what you're doing, how you're interacting with things, and like kind of like really seeing the big picture of it all, which a lot of times it's hard to do when you're in it, when you're in the grind and everything. You kind of see like, okay, this would work so much more better and more like efficiently if I just have it balanced all the time. And so that's what I've been kind of like, nobody's perfect. I'm not perfect. I'm not saying like I do this all the time. Like, I am constantly tipping the scale in one direction and the other, but like knowing that and kind of trying to strive for that balance, I think is the first step into really kind of like figuring out what it is that I need. I think, I don't know, I think I strayed from the
No, I think it makes it goes back to why would balance be important, or and you touched on it. And I think it makes so much sense because even like in a biological level, our body does that. It's constantly striving for that balance, or let's say homeostasis that we call. And even like spiritually, if you think about it, the middle path that's out there is also balance, or the yin and the yang, and how that comes into play is also about balance. So it was about why, the question going back to it is like, why would that be important for you, which you answered, and then coming back to us, why should it be important for us or for people to think about balance or connection?
I think it's both. I think it's basically, if you think about it, it's people would like to think, oh, it's for the greater good. But I'm gonna go completely selfish here and just do it for yourself. Like, even if you don't believe in this whole like spiritual like balance and etc., think of it as a scientific level. If you overwork yourself, your body is gonna break down. It's just, that's just how it is, you know. Like, if you literally grind yourself so hard. Like, you're not carbon. You're not going to turn into a diamond. You're just going to turn into dust. Like, if you want to make sure that you want this balanced life, because you want to live a nice, healthy life. And not only that, when you live a healthy life and you literally touch upon yourself, like, and make yourself balanced, you help other people become balanced. And I think the main thing about my views is, if you can do it, then you're literally proving to other people that they can do it. And I think that's where movements and like basically like big shifts and change in social economy and everything happens. So I it's so weird coming from like a yoga person that's like, just think of a greater good. Like, no, think about yourself. Like, really just take care of yourself. Find that balance within yourself, because that's gonna not only make you good, but the people surrounding you feel great as well.
I think I'm in 100% alignment with that too, because it starts from you. And let's say if the balance is tipped off and you're unhappy, I think that translates to the relationship, the person right next to you. It kind of affects that, and the way you go out and put yourself out, not just at work, but in the greater world that we're talking about, greater good. It comes from within too, you know. So and I think I have to say, for you to take a stance like that and to start a business that's true to your own value, right? To step out of, which is comfortable, right? In a sense, you have a good job, pays well, you're working hard and doing probably what the culture or the society says you're successful, you're a successful woman. But to say like, no, this is not what I want. And to say like, hey, I'm gonna create something that's my own.
Right.
And it will feel true to me. I may not be, at 100, but I'm still living the life that I choose for myself.
Exactly.
And that gives back to the world.
I think that's a big risk that a lot of people aren't willing to take. But I think it's like I said before, it's what are you going to risk for your happiness? Right. Because for me, I've always been grind, like forget happiness, forget like numb yourself of that, like just do what you do and be successful. But then at a certain point, you're like, is it really worth it for me? If I literally die tomorrow, am I gonna look back and be like, oh, that was all right? Or am I gonna be like, dang, I should have done this or that? And ultimately, I think that's kind of where it starts, you know, like within yourself, finding happiness there.
That's so important. I'm so glad you're touching on that, because I think that's the predominant message, is to like numb it out. And I think more so where I grew up, it was like compromise. You're not going to get everything you want in life, so suck it up, like keep at it. Our ancestor did it, so we got to do it, kind of, So I think it's about living not just true to ourselves, but also breaking that pattern of just like sucking it up. Life isn't about sucking it up,
And I think in a sense, like, I get it. There's a cultural norm, and I don't say I want to hate on that as much, but I think in a sense it's a different point of view. If you're gonna suck it up because you can, and it's your decision to, because you're strong enough, not because you're literally forcing that feeling down. That's opposite. That's a opposite reaction, like, that you want from things.
And just the repercussions of that, I just wonder, I think that's a silent killer or pain in itself that we carry on. It's just like the burdens that you carry, but doesn't feel worth it because it doesn't feel genuine or true to you. So I will go on to the next question. And this is related to your recovery, right? You had hip injuries and you've gone through 2 surgeries through that. So tell us like what led to it, and I guess what I wanted to talk about this was living with pain isn't easy. I mean, especially physical pain, and we have emotional pain and all of that too, but physical pain really impacts us. The motivation we're talking about, our ability to stay present, move, be happy, just for the lack of a word, like all of that, it impacts us in so many levels. Tell us about your journey through that.
So for my surgery, yes. So it was kind of like weird because it was an accident. Like not like the surgery was an accident it was an injury that happened overnight. It wasn't one of those. It was things. So my body was basically born a certain way where my bone structure was off, and I've been living with this my whole life, not knowing this at all. And then at the age of 29, was it 29? Oh my god, it's 30. Oh my god.
It's hard to recall.
It's the same thing. 20s, 30s. But basically my body decided to give out and be like, you know what, I can't do this anymore. And so excruciating pain within my hips, like whether it be walking, sitting, everything. And I knew something was wrong, and I found out it's called hip dysplasia. And for those of you who know, it just is a bone structural mishap where the femur bone doesn't fit correctly into the little socket, and the socket itself for mine was very shallow, and so it was literally grinding against my femur bone the whole time, and the cartilage and everything was completely ripped apart, shattered. And so the surgery meant going in, shaving off a part of my bone, kind of structuring how my bones fit. And so it wasn't actually, it sounds disgustingly horrible, but it was a lot easier. The surgery was one and done. Like you go in, I don't even have to stay a night, and then I was out. It was just the recovery process was taking a very long time. I have been an athlete all my life, whether it be tennis, track, and like anything. Like I like to snowboard. I'm not good at it, but you know, it keeps me active. And I just like doing things like hiking and all this surfing, everything, yoga, but so not being suddenly going from doing a lot of different things to nothing mentally. And for anyone that was ever in a sport understands this, that got injured, like for going from working out every day and doing things and then suddenly nothing, staying in a bed all day, it really kind of like gets to you. Like what am I doing? Like I need to be doing things. But what I should have done was kind of be like, you know what, my body needs this rest. It'll be fine. But definitely, it was definitely a struggle. My only motivation of trying to sit still was that I don't ever want to feel that pain ever again. Because it was literally to a point where I couldn't sleep. I couldn't do anything. And so, and then previous to this, I have had multiple times where I've been in a hospital overnight, or like multiple times in a row in a month, and I just don't like it. I'm sure nobody likes going to the hospital, seeing a doctor, and being IV'd up every single time, and it's not fun, and it's not ideal. And so like my motivation was mainly not to go back there ever again. And so it was nice. It did kind of put me in a really like bad state for like maybe a week, but then I kind of got used to it. I luckily have pets. I have a cat and a dog and a husband. Well, that's, you know, pet and companion. Sorry, not a pet. My husband is not a pet. But my companion. So it was a lot easier for me to handle this because I had people and family that literally were there to support me and to take care of me and talk to me so I wouldn't go crazy. So I don't know what I would have done without them. And for people that do it living on their own, I think, like, give them 100% props, because that's hard for me. I'm a very social person. Like, I need a human interaction. I can only imagine what my mind would have gone through if I didn't have any of that. So but it wasn't as bad as most people probably have gone through. I got the better end of the stick, I think, when it came to surgery and pain. And at that point, when I decided to do the surgery, it was at a point where my mind was pretty like stable, versus if you told me this 10 years ago or like 15 years ago, or even in high school, I would have been a huge wreck. I refused to go to the hospital to a point where I have to be hospitalized because I refuse to go to the hospital. Like, that's the kind of person I used to be. And so to go from there and just be like, you know what, I'm just gonna get the surgery, get it done, let's just do this. Like, it's a mind shift, but I think it was an important one. And so I think that in itself was the reason why I was able to be okay with all the pain and staying still and not being able to move as much.
Right. Yeah.
And so it wasn't as bad, I think.
Yeah, looking back, right? But yeah, I think pain it's something I've been kind of reflecting on. Physical pain, emotional pain, and ability to hold on to that and see what comes out of it has been very fascinating lately. And I've been talking to, previous guests about that too. So, coming back to something that is gonna require courage on my part too is talking about grief, right? And for our listeners, we're connected big time through that, right? I mean, we knew each other beforehand, but I think a shared grief was something that really brought us together. And before grief, it was like shared caregiving, let's say, all of that. We lived together, in the house, and we shared that piece. But that's been fascinating because ever since that, we haven't really talked about how are you doing, or how are you feeling, or how are you grieving. And that's been very fascinating. As I think the more I reflect on my relationships, I often wonder about that. Like, I'm not able to ask you or your husband, Andy, like, how are you doing, right? Especially with regards to grieving. And that robs me from a chance to check on you.
Right.
It robs me from a chance to speak to how I am doing.
Right.
Right. And perhaps, I think in a societal level too, that's what I've noticed is, it's a difficult conversation, of course, but for me personally, I'm scared of saying the wrong things or asking it wrong way, or like, am I going to remind you of something that you're probably not at a space to talk about, right? So I wanted to hear your thoughts about that. Like, how has your experience been around that?
So this round of grief, basically. Grief has definitely been a company that I've had ever since I was young. And as unfortunate as it is, this kind of loss wasn't my first. And so this second time around, I wouldn't say I was more prepared, but I knew what was coming. Like the rushes of pain or like sadness. And for me, I think it doesn't get any easier, obviously. It's always going to hurt just as much, if not, if it at that moment feels like it's more. And it feels like it's crazy, everything's crumbling around you. And for me, the first time around, I let myself go completely, and it went a completely different spiral. And like you said, it's a topic that most people don't speak about because they're afraid of that subject, or it's just not something that people are taught you are allowed to talk about. Like, people are like, don't touch on that subject. But then you think more, and when I think about it now, it's just like, why not? Like, people need to talk about it. Like, what people don't realize is that the more you decide to distance yourself from that topic, the more hurt a person can get. And it's not, and don't take that the wrong way. It's not saying that, like, if you don't reach out to the person, you have hurt them. That's not it at all. It's basically kind of, it's a self-realization. It's more within yourself of understanding that grief, accepting that grief, and then where do you go from there? Do you allow people, because the thing is, you can check up on me, and that's great. But if I don't allow you to be a part of my grieving process, or like the rehabilitation of it, there's no point in that. Like, you can try, and that's amazing, but if the other person isn't going to let you in, that's going to be a problem. And for me, I have always been a type of person that was like, if you haven't gone through it, then why would you know? And that was the case with any therapy session that I've had. Like, it was very, you don't know me. Like, don't talk to me. Or very much like put up a wall and leave it at that. But the second time around, or even before that, I realized that that wasn't the way to go. You know, like it was way more hurtful, not only to me, but I realized that I was unintentionally and kind of hurting the people around me by not talking to them. Because even if the people around me, or like your friends or family, aren't affected by this certain grief, they are hurt by the emotions that you are feeling because they care about you. And that's the biggest point that I don't think I really understood till like basically the time that I found my revelation of like what my inner connection was within myself and etc. But basically, your happiness is their happiness. That's what true friends and family are. And so seeing especially other people around me, like you or like Andy, feeling that grief and knowing and having it knowing that that grief was shared makes it a little easier, but it doesn't make it any harder. I mean, it doesn't make it any easier. But it does make it more connecting, I guess. Like there's this common thread. You don't want it to be the only common thread that you're connected with, but it did make it more easier to open up about it. And I think even if you didn't say anything, just knowing that someone went through it with you was more than enough at a certain point. And so I think not talking about it was okay, because in my mind, at least for me, I knew exactly what you were going through and what kind of feelings you probably were going through. And basically knowing that you kind of, even if you didn't know that that feeling was basically what I was feeling, it made it a little less harder for me to hold on to that pain. I guess it was easier for me to let it go because I knew I wasn't alone. And I think that's what it is. Grief is easier when you know it, you're not alone.
And that's something I've been thinking about for a while, and wanting to talk to you, or you know, hopefully one day with Andy too, that I think in some way we let the connection deepen, but also the stories, or let's say the shared experience, to expand almost, you know. But like you said, you know, in so many ways it's like unsaid way of sharing and going through it together, but also sometimes wanting to ask, you know. So that's something I've been thinking about, and I'm glad, you know, we're talking about it. So there's that. And one of the analogies that I've actually gone through my own training and thought about is this idea that grief is almost like the ocean. It doesn't ever go away. Like you said, you know, you just kind of learn to ride the waves almost. So some days the waves are calming, some days it's crashing, so it's overwhelming, and you just learn to swim along those waves. Or I don't know, if you're a surfer, you know, do that. So that's been a very helpful way of looking at it, and I think across my clients too, it helps. For you, I know, you know, unfortunately you said it is the second round of grief for you. What would you say, if you could put it pictorially or visually, what would you say grief is like?
So it's funny that you brought up the ocean, and like it was like, because I've actually reflected on this a lot by myself, and written it down multiple times in a book, not book, but like a notebook. And it's kind of similar actually. So I would say grief is a company that's always there, or actually it's a pit or a ditch that's next to your bed. You wake up with it every morning, but whether or not you slip into that ditch or a hole is different every single day. You know, sometimes people don't notice it. You wake up and you don't notice it, and you just go straight out the door. Sometimes you literally slip in accidentally. You don't even notice, and next thing you know, you're in a ditch, and you're having such a hard time getting out. Or sometimes, in my case, the first time around, you cover it up with carpet and pretend it's not there, and then you forget it's there, and then you trip in, and then you're in an even bigger ditch.
Right.
But I think it's just kind of noticing that grief is this ditch that's next to you every morning. You wake up with it, and acknowledging that it's there, because every person has it.
Right.
Every person, and no matter how many, it could be a small ditch, it could be a big ditch. It depends on how many devils you have in your mind. And that's not a bad thing.
Yeah.
It's not a bad thing that those devils that dig this ditch make you who you are.
All right.
And so it's not a horrible thing to have. It's just, for at least me, it was a revelation of either falling into the ditch, but now it's more waking up with it, looking at it, and then looking out the door, looking out the window, seeing how beautiful of a day it is, and then deciding to step out that door. And don't get me wrong, I will slip into that ditch every so often, because people trip all the time. They fall. And then the thing is, the many times as I've fallen, I've learned to get myself out of that ditch, if not call for someone that can help me get that ditch, because hand in hand, that ditch is also basically best friends with a thing called depression. And staying in that ditch too long will put a blindfold on you. And sometimes that blindfold is on you before you even wake up. And when that blindfold, called depression, is on you all the time, you're gonna always fall into that ditch. And so for me, when that happens, I learned that either I can take it off myself, or I call someone that knows how to either pull me out of that ditch and take off that blindfold for me. And I think that was the biggest struggle for me with this ditch that I have. And I think it's a learning process for everyone. And no one's gonna have the same kind of support system or the same life experiences as the person next to you. And so it's a journey that we're all gonna have to take one time or another. But I think staying calm, breathing, and trying to take it one step at a time, instead of panicking, flailing, and digging yourself into a bigger ditch, is the most important thing. I think. It's hard. It's hard. It's scary to think about, because nobody wants to be there. Nobody wants that grief. Nobody wants to be in a depression state. But some people are more prone to it than others. Some people will be in there for years. Some people will be there for a weekend and be fine. But, no matter what it is, I think that's why I think self-balance and connection with yourself and first is the most important thing.
Right. Yeah. What I'm thinking about is, as you're saying, it's a shared experience. Some people, including me, I think it's a place I kind of block out. It's a place I don't want to go, so I'm not going to take myself there. So, I'm better off staying away from it. But it's also such a human experience. I don't think there's one single person who will escape that. And in that, because it's a collective experience, the ability to call on for help or say, hey, I'm struggling, so reaching out and connecting through that can definitely be healing for so many of us.
And that takes courage and practice.
Absolutely.
So, I mean, most people, for some reason, connected to weakness, but I think it's the biggest strength you could ever have, to be able to reach out to somebody, because it's hard, to talk about it.
Absolutely. So let's kind of steer away from that and tell us about your experience growing up as Japanese American.
Yes.
Right? You were born here.
I was born here. Yes.
So tell us, how was it growing up? And I guess I'm more curious in terms of how was it as a Japanese American within your home and outside of your home, like,
Definitely. Interesting.
Sum it up.
They're very, luckily, like, I grew up in a community where there are a lot of Nikkei, or like second generation. I don't know if you'd call it second generation. Basically, where the parents are immigrants, and I am basically born here, the first generation to be born and live here. And so it was interesting because there are literally cultural clashes between American culture and Japanese culture sometimes.
Yeah.
And for me, finding basically who am I was the biggest thing.
Yeah.
Not within my family or like my friends, because I knew where I was there. It was just more within myself.
Yeah.
And trying to figure out, am I okay to feel like this? Like certain things like honor and shame and stuff like that come along with like certain cultural like aspects like that I didn't feel because I was born here and raised here as an American. Like I didn't have that, and my mom would constantly always be like, have you no shame? I'm like, no. Like I don't. Like what are you talking about? I don't care. Like stuff like that. But as you grow older, there's certain things that you realize like there was deeper meaning behind that, and it wasn't straight up, don't you have shame? It was more like look at your surroundings and stuff like that. But like that's another thing. But other than that, I think I was very fortunate, I think, to be growing up as a Japanese American here, especially in South Bay and in California, because I was, I think, privileged with so many things that most people are not in any other state or like any other country. And that the fact that you are bilingual in itself is like, there's so many more benefits to it than you can imagine, than you think. And so, and especially at this point where I'm like speaking, like people don't realize I can speak Japanese, and vice versa. When I do speak Japanese, some people are like, when I flip to English, they're like, whoa, what? But I think it's becoming more and more common for sure. But I think the only time I've ever really felt that I wasn't where I was supposed to be, I think there were a couple instances, definitely here, but other than that, it was more of like just self-confidence more than anything. I didn't really realize, I thought of my background as like kind of like asset, really, more than a liability. I was more like, hey, I'm Japanese American, like don't hate, like definitely like wear it on my sleeve, be proud of it. That was always my case. I was never once like, oh, I'm Japanese American, you know, like I was never like that. So for me, I actually never had the internal struggle that most people might have here. And I think it's also ignorance and bliss at the same time. I'm pretty set on certain views, and like when I think of one thing, like oh, I'm cool, like a Japanese American, like that's how I've thought all my life. And I think it helps that I was more cultured, as in I wasn't just here. I actually went to Japan every summer when I was young, and I also went to Hawaii because that's where my other family is. And so being able to jump back and forth within the three places to grow up, I think was kind of culturally expanding. And I realized that this whole world is a melting pot. You know? Like that. Like, so I'm Japanese American, but that doesn't exclude me from everything. You're a mutt too. Like, you know, like not mutt, but like you kind of get it.
I think, that's America, right? That's so America in terms of where you have this mixed race, I guess. Like, what would you say? Multicultural.
It wasn't even a race thing, I think. It was more like views. Like, people have different views of things, and it sometimes is a mixed melting pot of your culture and American culture, or like somewhere else, and you don't realize it, but it shapes who you are, how you act, you know. And I see it, like not everyone acts the same.
Yeah.
And that's the beauty of humanity, you know, like everybody's different. Everybody is in a melting pot in their mind.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and I agree with you. And what you mentioned early was the piece of going to Japan and Hawaii, and then being here in South Bay Area. So what would you say from these different places of, like, you know, how, I guess, what qualities do you take from these different cultures, and how have these qualities kind of shaped you today?
So first off,
Yeah.
I can probably categorize into three things.
Okay.
Per country or per place. So as an American here in SoCal, California, beach life, I have learned basically in a really simple sense to be selfish.
Yeah.
To think for myself.
That's important.
And to fend for myself. Because here in America, it's all about you. And it could be taken to an extremity of a bad way, or just take it in a good sense where it's confidence, you know? Like I really gained confidence here and learned how to stand up for myself, because you see so many people here. People are outspoken. And you know what? Like, I am important. My views are important. What I say is important. And that doesn't deter from the fact that anything you say isn't important. But I'm just saying that I have worth as well. Like, and that's what I've learned here. In the South Bay, in California, in America. In Hawaii, I have learned basically aloha means love. And there's so many more things to that. But the sense of connection with everybody and the world, and kind of like going with the flow, you know, like you don't have to be uptight about everything, and just mellow out, chill, enjoy the little things. I guess if I were to say like Hakuna Matata.
I love that. That's a perfect
Hakuna
analogy.
Matata kind of like mindset. It's very much that. I've learned that while my stay and whenever I visit my grandma in Hawaii, and I love that. Like, everything slows down. The beaches stay brighter a little bit longer, and the salt and the sea, like I can close my eyes and smell it and see it and hear it as I speak. And that's kind of like the connection that you want to make with everything around you. So I've learned to do that in Hawaii. And then in Japan, I would say the biggest thing was to resonate with the vibrations of other people and discipline. Two things, I guess, because the thing is, I have a tendency when I stay here, people have a tendency to be in their own bubble, and sometimes you forget that there are other people that have feelings and like thoughts that aren't your own, and you know, and that's fine. And in Japan, that's completely different. It's make sure you think about what the other person is thinking, react to how they're reacting, and that kind of resonance and like balance and kind of like the kind of vibrations that other people give. Because the thing about Japan, which is also their biggest weakness, is they don't say it what they mean. They don't ever say what they mean, and so you kind of have to dig and really not guess but know what they mean by certain things. And I'm not good at it at all, but I've picked up on certain things and being there. And so I think that's just something I'm more in tune with than people that have been raised here, lived here, and have never left here, for sure. And discipline, well, just discipline.
Why would you say that? Because you're very disciplined.
Oh my God, I'm so selfish. I have no willpower when it comes. If I let myself go, I'll let myself go. But discipline, like literally, you see little kids. If it's like that test of
the
marshmallow or cookies, where you literally look at it and you say if you want it. You can have double if you wait this much longer. And I think that kind of mentality I don't think would have ever been with me if I was here. Just because I grew up with two sisters. Nonetheless, we fight like boys. We were for survival of the fittest. Get your hands on it first before anybody else, kind of thing. And so kind of being patient was
Yeah.
never really part of me. And this is something that like is kind of off tangent, but I also have ADHD. Like
really?
I'm a
Yeah,
spectrum of
yeah,
it,
yeah.
and I'm not as intense as certain people, but I am on the spectrum.
Yeah.
And so being able to sit down and just like be patient and do something has always been a struggle for me. And I think in Japan, and especially because I also do martial arts and yoga, it was very much keep your mind steady, slow, blank kind of thing.
Yeah.
And I think it was just years of training and like just experiences that made me more able to kind of basically suppress that ADHD a lot better, or like manage it better. Sorry, not suppress it, but manage it a lot better because I grew up with that. And I don't think I would have been like that if I never went to Japan, and my grandma wasn't as strict as she was for sure.
Yeah.
So
Those are real gifts. I think it kind of makes sense to me, at least where we started off, your idea of your business. It's a balance. Here you have on one side you and your values, your confidence, what you have to bring to the table, and Japan gives you, or the experiences from that side of your, let's say, connections, your cultural heritage from that side gives you, it's not just you, but also kind of co-creating this with somebody else who's right across you. And in between that, like let's say if you are on two boats, you have a balance between on both boats, one leg here, one feet here, one feet here, and the thing that kind of keeps you afloat or drifts you forward is the presence that you derive from Hawaii.
Yes, I like that. I'm gonna write that down.
Yeah.
Thank you.
That's the image that came to me, but it makes sense. I mean, it ties to what you're doing. It ties to your reflections that you've done in the past few years, and it gives me a window to you to get to know you better. Because otherwise, we wouldn't have talked about this, or maybe at a different context. So going to the next question, I guess it goes down to your, again, upbringing or your childhood. Let's go back to childhood. And childhood brings up a lot of emotions for me, or a lot of reflections for me. And I'm sure it's for everybody, that it comes with a package of things. But I'm
such a package.
Yeah. What we for this question, I guess we're only going to focus on one piece that would be a resource. Going back to play in childhood, because that's the most playful time of our life. It's a, what do you call, if you look at it, a store box filled with creativity of like being in the moment, being in the zone, and all of that, comes difficult for me as an adult. So that's something I seek for. That's why I ask.
Definitely.
So what was play like for you? What was daydream like for you? Fantasy? What was your favorite toy? Or, anything that comes to you when you kind of think of play as a child, your child self. What was that like?
So it's so funny because, it's kind of like, like you said, like as you grew up, you kind of lose that sense of imaginative or like that playfulness. But as a child, and even now, I have always been a very imaginative person. And I'm not gonna lie, I don't think that's ever changed for me. Like, if I wanted to, I could like literally just like sit in a room. Like timeouts never worked for me because I would be in a corner and I would like literally have a conversation with this pretend imaginary thing and have fun and just like, and I have always been the type out of my three sisters, or my sisters, to basically have my own little fluttering mind. My mom used to call me a butterfly because I would literally just do my own thing and just go. I'm literally in my own world, and I say I don't think I've changed because Andy tells me this all the time. Andy literally tells me like, you're in your old world again, like and sometimes if you've ever like traveled with me anywhere, you'll notice that sometimes you'll look back and I'm completely somewhere else. I don't even like where the hell did she go? And it's because like my focus is like, ooh, look at that, like, and I'll just go straight to it. And it's not like a lack of focus, maybe it is, but it's also kind of like this,
I see it more as following your own, doing your own thing.
I have always been a lookout window kind of person, like daydream, kind of like never give up on your daydream. And as corny as that sounds, it's daydreams have literally been with me ever since I was a kid. I could stare at the window and I don't know, like I just kind of zone out and just like start just being in my own world, and that's never changed. I still do that to this day, and even if you go back to my old job, like talk to my boss, I literally sat in his chair and he'd be like, come back from me like, Kat, what are you doing? It's like, I'm just looking out the window.
I remember you saying that, being
he calls it my little cat naps, and I'm not even napping, but I guess like in my mind I'm in a nap. But
what does that do for you?
It calms me down. It takes me away, and it's almost like, so if you've ever watched TV with me as well, I am very focused and I zone out really fast. I'm very bad at like snapping out of it. And I think it's because a TV is kind of like a window. And to me, a window is like a TV screen.
Right.
It is a whole another world that I'm not a part of yet.
Right.
Out there right now. My presence isn't out there. But I could look out and be like, oh, look at all the things that are happening. And like, it's a movie. Basically, this window that is in front of us right now is a movie for me. And I could stare at it for hours just looking out there. And that's just been the case for me. And I kind of just like let my mind wander, because no one's ever thought less. Like, I guess like your mind could be steady, but it is never blank.
Right.
Like I understand like, oh, blank, like clear your mind. Like I get that, but I think that's more of a terminology than like literally clearing your mind.
Yeah.
Because clearing your mind for me is just steadiness. Yeah. Your thoughts will always be there. Right. And I think like it's a part of like kind of a yoga aspect where your thoughts will always be there. Yeah. You let it pass through. It comes back and forth and just kind of like guide it out if you need it to. But for me, the window is literally just staring at the thoughts and kind of not even trying to control it, and that, in a sense, I guess it is kind of like a meditation for me. And it's always been the case where I just let my mind wander where it wants, and sometimes I'll think of the most amazing things that way. Stories in my mind, because I like stories.
Right. Don't we all? So it reminds me of, like, in some ways, maybe a way to ground yourself, even to look at, what may be happening out in the world, and taking that observer view, right? Like the bird eye, helicopter view to see and imagine and go to the corners of your mind, So going back to, I guess, this child cat, or, the little cat version of you, what would she not believe about your life today?
That I'm not a princess. 100%. Up to I don't even know what grade I was. I literally was like, Mom, I'm going to be a princess. I'm going to marry a prince. So that little cat saw me and like, oh, you're not a princess? Like, what's wrong with you? Where's your prince? And I think I would pretty much tell myself like, oh, honey, you are you're not a princess. You are a queen. Like, you are your own savior. You are your own ruler. Like, like princess, that is child's play.
It's time to grow up, honey.
Time to grow up. Be your own ruler. Like, don't wait for any knight in shining armor. As handsome and like I love my husband, blah blah blah, stuff like that. Like I've told him this too, so like I don't take offense to Andy if you're listening. I could live without him. Is basically what it is. He literally amplifies my life in a better direction, and I literally am so appreciative of him, and I can't imagine a life without him. But does not mean I can't live without him. And I think that's important.
Absolutely. Yeah, I was actually reading a chapter 2 of this poet. He writes, it's a letter form, but he talks about conventional love and how love is, love is not so much about losing yourself, and just like surrendering to the other person, and this existence of I is not there at all. What it is about it is being able to be in solitude, being able to be with your own shadows and lights and victories and all of that, and being with a person so that you have a shared purpose, or that what you were talking about, amplification, that's necessary. And I think I grew up with the other way. For me, love is all about surrender. Like, if you love this person, you dedicate everything, and it's such a, I guess, like, renewal of looking at the idea that we call love,
And I think it's hard.
Yeah.
Because love is something you kind of have to experience yourself in order to understand. And when you're young, you don't know any better.
Yeah.
And you kind of think, this must be love.
Yeah.
And you romanticize about this, like, surrendering everything for this love. And love will conquer all and stuff like that. And maybe it does, but what people don't realize is that love should be towards yourself.
Yeah.
And then if the other person doesn't resonate that love back, or like doesn't amplify it the way it should, then people need to realize that, as hurtful as it is, it is, and maybe it isn't what they think it is, and stuff like that. And like I said, it's all an experience thing. You're never gonna know.
Right.
You can be told so many different things.
Oh yeah, and you watch. One big part of how you learn about love is you observe, you, what do you call, emulate, you see it in the movies.
Yes.
Culturally, there is an unspoken message that you grow up with, so all of that goes in,
Definitely.
But in therapy, there is a view, what we call is, relationship. Ideally, you want to be almost like two individual eyes, capital I, standing next to each other. No, actually H, because you have two individual lines, and there's a middle line, like a horizontal line that keeps you connected. But sometimes you can go down the other route where it's almost like an A. So if one piece falls, then there is no A, right?
Oh yeah.
And there's the two individual eyes that I was talking about is two separated from each other. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
There is not shared
definitely.
connection. So it's like finding a place where you're standing your ground, the other person standing their ground, and then there is a connection between the two, a mutual connection. So that's interesting. So goes back to not being a princess, but coming to see you're a queen.
Yeah.
And I love it. I love it. And the confidence, I guess, the self-respect is contagious. It gives me the power, or let's say, you give it to me as an example, or as an inspiration.
I could hope for.
Yeah, absolutely. And I hope that is getting conveyed out there too. But okay, so before we wrap it up, I guess I want to talk about what has been a stretch or a struggle for you lately.
I think, let's see, like in general, or emotionally, or like physically, I don't know. Physically,
which route do you want to go?
Haven't been walking around. What's been a struggle? Let's see. So starting off my own company, you realize everything lies on you, and it's not like you have a set schedule, and so I kind of tip my balance, like going back to, I kind of tip my balance being in one direction of work instead of life and like health for a little bit, because I was so not used to just doing everything,
right?
And the new things that you learn, and it's so exciting for me that you don't even realize it. But then I like recently realized, okay, I need to scale back and kind of go back to the balance that I was at.
Right.
Like, I understand that this is exciting and there's so many like pieces to this, but like in due time, it's like, so that's kind of been a struggle for me recently. Trying to time manage and try to do things at a more doable pace rather than overworking myself,
right?
Because that has always been my go-to MO, overwork and like work till you drop kind of state. And I just got out of it, and so I'm not trying to get back into it.
Right.
So I guess that's kind of it. And
Yeah.
I think just because the whole COVID thing, the reconnecting with people, because that is a big part of me in general. Like as a person, connections make a big part of me and my happiness. And so I try to remember to do that every so often and deepen those connections, because like I tend to forget sometimes, especially when there's like, oh, like just because we're in a quarantine or like we can't see each other or we can't travel doesn't mean I can't video chat and stuff like that, you know?
Right.
And I think that's important, that like if they're on your mind, then just reach out, like you know, like just take 2 seconds to be like, hey, what's up? I'm thinking of you, you know. And I think that's probably gonna make your shoulders a little lighter, knowing that you were able to connect with them once again, or at least like touch base, and they're probably gonna love hearing from you too, you know. So I'm trying to keep that in mind when I do things here and there. I'm like, oh, I should probably talk to them. I haven't talked to them in a while. I was like, I'll just say hi.
Right.
Like it's so random. If you see my text, it's like 2 months later, hey, what's up? Like, you know, like it's I've always been kind of like that kind of person, but I mean, people are always willing. So my friends have my friends now. I guess.
And I think that's the special part about you. And I've always seen you as a person, at least for us in our life, you've been the thread of connection. Like you've brought us together in many ways. And it was Jung-san before that, my host mother, your mother-in-law now, who we were referring to when we were talking about the shared grief. So she was that person, and then after her, it became you naturally, you know, like you were the one who brought us together. So that's there. But I guess what I was trying to get to it is, no matter 2 months a gap, you reach out. And that's the best part of it, you know. I think I'm the kind of person who would succumb to like guilt, and I'll be like, oh, I want to reach out, but I haven't reached out in so long. What are they gonna think about me, or are they upset at me? And that kind of, you know, it goes down that route. So I'm gonna take that with me, you know, just make it simple and say hello. Because you were thinking about them anyways, you know.
And like kind of going back to that one comment that I made is like, because what if you didn't? And then next thing you know, you never see them again. And I think that is the biggest thing for me. Like,
I so feel it. I tend to think about it in that terms too. It's like, what if this is the last time? And the regret that kind of follows, if it were to follow, like how would I live with that, you know? So anyways, those are for another time, we'll save it. So let's go into a rapid fire section. So I call this rapid fire. It has never been rapid, but we'll see how it goes. I mean,
I saw that section. I've glazed at the nose. But I did not read them. So quick warning, this is all very organic. It's gonna be very rapid. My mind, you'll see how cluttered my mind is by answering these probably.
No. Okay, we'll see. So let's go with, what are you excited about?
I'm excited about summer.
That's the best thing.
First thing, the sun, the moment I can step outside and realize that it's not 60 degrees and under.
It's been cold. I don't know if we can complain about it being cold, at least we're not in East Coast, but it's cold.
Don't hate on us. I literally grew up in Japan and Hawaii every summer, which is 80 degrees and then humid as hell. So compared to that, yes, I am a wuss, and I will admit it.
No, I'm with you though. I've been so spoiled when I, like, you know, growing up in Kathmandu, it would get cold. It would get so cold to a point my hand, like, I don't know what the connection is, but the water would be cold as hell. My hands would literally turn like dark, like the darkest shade. And I haven't experienced that in so long, but it's just to say, like, I don't know, my body would react to it. But now I'm so changed in the sense that I'm so spoiled. Like, even now I need heater throughout the day. So I'm with you. I'm like looking forward to it.
You have been converted to a SoCal girl.
Seriously.
Welcome to the Cali life.
Well, I'm glad. You know what I mean? I think people want to live in SoCal just for the weather. So, okay. So what are you afraid of?
Okay, fast. Goodbyes and goodbyes and change. I think they kind of go hand in hand.
Yeah.
I have always been scared and afraid of goodbyes, and it's still, even now, like, just the thought of see you later, like, kind of like I feel my heart like tighten a little bit. And I think it's involuntary because I think the two tragic losses that I've had are very abrupt, and kind of like there was a lot of regret in not being able to say the things I wanted to say, and like whenever, I think even on phone calls and stuff like that, like I kind of have a tendency to not like to say goodbye. I'll always be like, see you later and love you and stuff like that, but I'll never really try to say like goodbye. That word in itself like scares me, like, and so like, and it still scares me to this day, like whenever a lot of my friends, like obviously we have friends that are overseas that leave back home to Japan, or like, or we travel together but we have to separate ways, and that hurts. Like even the smallest connection that I make with somebody on the street and I'm like, see you later, and like I just overthink about it, but like it's just like I'm never gonna see this person again, like that's like the whisper that comes to mind immediately, and it kind of hurts. But like I've trained myself where I just like, whenever that happens, like depending on how intense it is, close my eyes, take a deep breath, and then I let it go, kind of thing. And I think that's kind of just something I'll always have to deal with, but hoping that someday it'll be a little less as intense, and it'll gradually probably get better, but until then, definitely goodbyes and change has always been something that I've been kind of like anxiety and stuff about. So
I'm on the same page as you, Sachan. If I were to name it, goodbyes are really hard for me too. And I have a history of having to say goodbyes over and over again. Having to confront the fact that I'm not going to see this person. Not like ultimately, as in your case, but goodbyes have been hard. And I know exactly what you're talking about, having like farewell sessions in the airport with people with who has meant a lot to us, right? So, who would have known had we not talked about that? Okay, so one thing you want to let go of this year.
Let go of my fat? No, I'm just kidding. My weight. I've gained quite a lot since last year.
And it's quarantine life. Here we go. And all we do is like snack.
No, letting go. I think the overthinking. I'm letting go of this regrets that come with what ifs and stuff like that. And I think that I'm kind of like working on it by starting up this brand of mine, by like just being like, just do it. And like let go of any self-doubt kind of thing. And like I think I've gotten more self-confident, which can someone be too confident?
No.
I guess I was kidding. No, don't be narcissistic, but be humble. But also like I think I've literally turned from this kid that never spoke in a room because she was so scared of what the teachers and other people would think, to someone that will literally speak her mind and does not give a shit. I'm sorry. Does not give a shit and will literally, be like, fuck it, I'm gonna say it because I think I know I'm gonna regret it if I don't say it. More than if I did.
Absolutely. Say it. Ooh, I admire that so much about you, and I think that's the reason why I started this podcast. Is like, speak these things, otherwise it's gonna eat me up because I'm like in my head, So what I'm hearing is like letting go of what ifs and self-doubts and embracing more of the confidence and practicing it.
And see, this is why I was so happy that you started this podcast, because like my mind is like literally, if you scribbled anything on a paper, it's like this, and then I don't know if this is how it is in your mind, but for me, you are that person that literally lays it out, and then like labels it for me.
Right.
And I don't like. I feel like you do that very unintentionally. Like that's the kind of person you kind of are to a lot of other people, and you don't realize it. And I love that about you, because you're like, oh my god, this is a sense of calm in my mind. Like I've never really thought about it that way, but yes, that's exactly what I wanted to say, kind of thing. So.
Yeah. Oh, I'm glad. I'm glad. I don't know if it kind of cultivated over the years, but I enjoy doing that. I guess, in a sense, I make sense of it in my own mind, but at the same time, I guess it's almost like that's what communication is, right? Like you look at it from your lens and like, I didn't think about it that way, but it makes sense. Like, you know, kind of landing onto each other, I guess.
Yes.
So what's a silent message that we all need to hear as general in the world right now?
You are amazing. You are amazing, you're capable, you're worthy. I think that people just don't say that enough.
Yeah.
And people get beaten down by other people and like emotionally or physically, it's because they think it's worth it for themselves. Yeah. And that's never the case.
Yeah.
You know, it's how, like, and even the most confident people, or people you may think are the most confident narcissistic people, are acting that way because they are not.
Yeah.
Like tendency. It's like a Napoleon, I guess, like trying to like counteract their insecurities.
Yeah.
And so I think if more people were able to love themselves more and find their own self-worth, they'll realize that everybody else around them has worth as well.
Right. It's not the top down, I'm better than you or you're better than me. It's about we're both worthy.
Yes. And
we both have ways we can serve each other. And you're absolutely right. Like, I think the terminology of narcissism is so misunderstood. It's like, you know, we see this appearance where it comes from like, I am better than you, or I am the best, or, you know, like the tone, I guess, the idea that we get of it out of the word narcissism. But when you look through that, or when you look inside that, what we see is a place of emptiness that comes from overcompensating for that emptiness, right? Yeah, I love that. I think that I was not expecting that at all, but I'm so glad you brought it up.
Thanks.
I think that's a message we all need to hear. We need to share with others and practice onto ourselves too, right?
Definitely.
Yeah.
Especially for yourselves, I think.
Yeah. What title would you give to this chapter of your life?
A new beginning. A new beginning.
Yeah.
I've turned a new leaf.
Yeah.
Like, and when I say chapter, my chapter started like a couple of years ago. But it's a new chapter that I believe has changed everything about me, and closed the chapter of this insecure, overcompensating me, bend over backwards, self-destructing person that I used to be. I think it was like stages of insecurity, timid, just self-destructive, and now I'm just in this new chapter where I know exactly what I feel and how I want to feel.
Oh my God, I love that.
Yeah, it's a new beginning.
Yeah. I think in the core, I believe I chase it, but I am sure a million other people, the world chases that desire for authenticity.
Yeah.
Right? We all want to feel in alignment, in touch with what's authentic to us.
And I think just striving for it is the first step.
Yeah.
And just because I stray off of that road all the time.
Yeah.
I'm constantly finding myself like, oops, like, oops, they're going the ditch again. Or like, oh, there I am, somewhere else. And, you know, like, just catch yourself. Yeah. Wherever, however far you strayed. And then just guide yourself back. And that's just what it is, you know? That's just like, don't beat yourself over it.
Absolutely.
You know?
Have you ever seen a Instagram post, or I don't know, it's probably out there, the idea of healing or growing that we have? Usually when we talk about it in concept, it's a straight line, A to B. That's the misconception, I would say.
Yes.
But how it usually is, it goes round, winding that way, but it's a messy process.
Yes.
It's never a clean cut A to B direct way. It's never like that. And what I'm hearing is basically you're highlighting that for us.
Definitely. And I think for me, it came easier for me to accept that because I, in itself, like as I was growing up, like I said, I was a very scattered brain child who went off on her own all the time. Yeah. It was never an A, B to B for me. Yeah. And so it was kind of part of me. Yeah. And for people like Andy, who's a very A straight to B kind of person, why wouldn't you take the most efficient route? It's harder for him, but I think he's starting to come around to my dark side.
I love that. I think it's about owning what we call the shadow side. And I don't want to go deep into that because of our time constraints, but it's about owning that piece. And I think what I'm hearing today with our conversation is time and time again, Sachin, you've stood up for what you've believed. You stood up for your daydreams. You know, you've taken a path and you stayed. It's almost like a commitment towards staying true to that, not just because it's like a selfish, like, you know, this is just what I want and I'm gonna follow through, and not just that, but it's like what you're striving for is balance, and I think that shows through that. But it's your journey, you know, like your ownership. You have a sense of ownership to what you're kind of striving for, and that's beautiful.
And I think every person should think of it like that. Everyone is their main character in their story. Yeah. So why not make it the best?
Yeah.
You know?
Absolutely. And just kind of thinking of the resentment otherwise, right? If you're not in the driving seat, someone else is. And what I'm thinking of right now is one of a training I attended, but it talks about if you ever have to choose between resentment and guilt, usually we're prone to, like, you know, like if we did something for ourselves, at least from Asian culture, it's like, you know, guilt follows up. So if you have a choice between resentment and guilt, always choose guilt, because you can work through that much more, like relatively easier than resentment, because then that stays with you for a while. So, okay. Coming back to, did you want to add anything to that?
Let me see, I'm trying to think. No, I just, well, kind of, but not really. I don't know. I feel like this is going to go into a different thing, but it's just like everybody has their devils, you know, and own up to that. Like I think we talked about this before. It's like dance with your devils. Oh, yeah. I think. Yeah. And, you know, like, find people that know, especially, and it kind of touches upon love, where I found someone who sees my devils and literally will dance with them. I love that. When they need, like, they will show me their devils, kind of thing. Yeah.
Can I add a quote?
Yeah.
It's a poem. It's a poem. It's a short poem, but it's like, I have memorized it because I'm 100% with you. It's, love is not where you hide your ghosts, it's where you reveal them. I think something along those lines.
Yeah. I like it. Yeah,
and it goes towards self-love, or the love that we exchange, right?
Yeah, I love that. Yeah, that's like a whole different topic, I feel like. And I know. So we'll leave that for another time.
For another time, because we're definitely going to have a second round. Okay, so what have you been most grateful for lately?
Everything.
There is much to be grateful for.
I'm grateful, for everything. I don't know. I think that, like, today's a good day. I think it's been hectic, but I am grateful. I wake up every morning. I'd say 3 things I like about, like, today, even before it starts. And then before I go to sleep, I say 3 things I'm grateful for. And so kind of touching base with that, throughout the day, I kind of say, like, oh my God, it's so sunny. I'm so grateful that it's sunny. Or like, oh, I'm so grateful I was able to see you today. That gratefulness. I think it sounds crazy, like too optimistic and stuff like that. But I think you caught me at a good day where I am grateful for today, at least everything of everything, like how far I've come, or where I am now, who I am as a person, and just the life that I have. I am grateful to be me, you know, and I'm grateful for the people who are working out there, and like kind of like just today is one of those days. Some days, every day it changes for me. And I think certain days that list will be a lot shorter. But I try to always find at least 3 things. Right. 3 even minuscule things that I can be grateful for.
Oh, yeah. So you do it in the morning and at night?
Yes.
you recount
Yes.
3 things that you would be
Three
grateful
things,
for.
yes. And one of the first ones, like sometimes, like always on my top list when I first wake up, I'm still here.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
sometimes when it's like, I'm so grateful, I'm still here.
Yeah.
Like, I'm alive.
Yeah. Sometimes, it's like moving through the wind. Sometimes it's just standing still and surviving the wind. Right? There's so much to that. But I think it's so important I don't do it. You gave me actually gratitude notebook. You remember 3 things? I haven't done that lately, but I think a practice of just inviting gratitude, it makes life more meaningful. But what does it do for you? Like,
I think it starts me off on the right foot, first of all. It puts me in the right perspective. And I think it stops me, for me, especially because I have been very prone to slipping into my little ditch, is it stops me from falling in, or at least that 3 list in the morning helps me take off my blindfold that I wake up with every morning, and then at night it literally closes my day, like reflecting so that I can try to find 3 new things later on tomorrow, kind of thing, like something to look forward to. So for me, it's stopping me from falling back into a bad habit that I've also been familiar with.
Right. Yeah. And I'm sure it serves different purpose to different people, but it definitely is an evidence-based practice to invite gratitude, like 3 things that went well, 3 things we're grateful for, and it adds not just to, like, let's say, in a bigger picture, it makes life meaningful, or it takes us away from our negative emotions or negative. I don't like the word negative, but because it's there, it's not.
It's always going to be a part of you, but I think it also helps you if you make that a habit. I've learned, kind of noticed the last few months that even drastically has changed the way I look at certain events that happen. Like a month ago I got a ticket, like a parking ticket. If it was my old self, I would have been like completely shattered. And then for me, as soon as I got it, I was like, oh well, it's under $100. It's
a little reframe.
Right? It's a reframe, and it's a don't get me wrong, you should be responsible. Don't park places you're not supposed to. Next time, please check the signs. Reflect on your decisions. But also don't beat yourself down for it. It kind of puts yourself in a different mindset where it's not the end of the world. You can still have a good day, kind of thing. And that's helped me a lot more the last few this past year than it has any year before that, I think, for sure.
So not allowing setbacks, which may at that moment feel big, but not allowing that to be the entire portrayal of your day or your life, right? That's beautiful. Okay, so I guess I'm gonna jump on to our last question. What words of wisdom would you like to leave us with? I think this whole episode has been a lot of wisdom for me, but on a different note, if you have that.
All in all, there are so many things I told you guys to do. But I think take it easy. Don't beat yourself down for every little thing. And just enjoy every little thing you do. I guess. Naturally, happiness, meaning in life, stuff like that, all come along with it afterwards. If you kind of just let those overthinking thoughts go, I guess. I don't know. It's just when you don't put yourself in a position where you're constantly criticizing yourself or scrutinizing yourself, just you are your most important person. So take it easy.
I wish we had schools, or even with growing up, that was the message that's garnered and so I think that's not enough. That's not emphasized enough how important that work is, and that's why it's so hard. It's a hard work. You put showing up for yourself over and over again daily, and allowing yourself to be. Right?
Very true.
Yeah. So taking it easy for sure.
Take it easy.
Yeah.
Probably like my husband's listening to this and be like, she takes it way too easy.
Hey, that's your, the piece that you bring from your aloha life and Hakuna Matata, right?
Hakuna Matata.
Yeah, and that's an important piece too, along with, what you're saying, discipline piece. You kind of balance it out.
I make it up for the parts that he doesn't have.
Yeah. Well, you have to, in many ways. I think that's how you bring two pieces together. Right? Okay. Anyways, so with that, we're ending the episode. If people wanted to find your your work, let's say to buy pieces from you, your home decor stuffs, where can they go and where can they find you?
So I have my own website. It is Love Cat Designs, cat with a K. .com. So that is my website, but I also obviously have an Instagram. It's love_cat with a K _designs. And you could just find me there, and that's mainly where I am. And I just recently expanded to a physical store in Santa Ana, and so I've been doing that. And I might be expanding a little more, like sneak peek, but so you'll find me here and there. I'll do pop-ups throughout the summer, but mainly online. And I love connecting with people, so even if it's just to say hi, or if you just need somebody to talk to and you don't have anyone, DM me on my Insta. I'd be down to chat,
Right. Yeah, absolutely. And it's such a positive space, Ajahn. I think it is. You open those doors through your website, and I've noticed that just allowing people to reach out and say you're not alone. Right? Sure. Okay, so I will put your website. I think through that website they can also find your yoga classes if you were to lead any of them, and all of that information. It'll be in the show notes, and we'll go from there. So
perfect.
Thank you for joining me.
No, thank you for having me.
And that's a wrap, my dear friends. Thank you for sticking with me and Kat throughout this episode. I hope something spoke to your heart as much as it did to mine. That said, I have included all the information on how to find Sayaka, Kat, through her website or through her social, in order to support her business, and through that supporting a ongoing charity, a new one each month. So please go find that on the show notes. Also, for any poems or any quotes that were mentioned throughout the episode, I have again compiled them in the show notes, so don't forget to check that out. Thank you all again, and I'll catch you again next time.